Xena Warrior Princess is a hack-and-slash action game developed by Universal Studios and published by Electronic Arts and released to the Sony PlayStation console on October 7, 1999. It's based off the hit television series of the same name which ran from 1995 to 2001. It stars Xena and Gabrielle as they find themselves thrown into a plot to take over the world by the evil sorceress Calibrax. Without further ado, let's dive into Xena Warrior Princess. Xena starts off with Xena and Gabrielle walking down the road when Xena spots a village in danger before we even get to the title screen. There's a training area you can select to get a feel for the game before you jump into the main story. Right off the bat, you're going to notice that none of the actors from the show lend their voices for the game. At first, it sounds like them, but after a few minutes, you're able to realize that it's not them. I personally feel the game would have been way better had they actually managed to get the original actors to lend their voices. Another thing that you're going to notice right out of the gate is that the camera will jump around and make you dizzy. This makes it hard in certain sections of the game where platforming comes into play. Xena has a few combos she does, like a spin attack with her sword, and she can throw her signature weapon, the chakram, at enemies from a distance. Be careful though, because Xena is completely defenseless once the chakram is thrown. Health meters are represented by a sword that turns red the more damage you take. Regular enemies and allies have a small bladed meter, while bosses have one about the same size as Xena's. In order to get through a stage, you have to defeat all enemies and solve some puzzles on the way. You travel through different areas like the Isle of Kronos, an Amazon village, and even the underworlds itself. Gabrielle, for the most part, is a damsel in distress you have to save. There's a minor part in the game where Gabrielle is with you and helping in the fighting, but she doesn't offer much help and you have to protect her while going through the stage. I found that to be a shame, as Gabrielle is my favorite character in Xena. About the worst part to be in the game is the underworld, as the platforming really takes center focus and you have to avoid falling into fire. Then right after the underworld section, you go to a village where you have to sneak up on enemies or they'll call for reinforcement. Then you have an escort mission where you have to protect an old guy who leads you to an item you need for later in the game, and then finally some kind of wizard who constantly disappears whenever you get close to him. Then you have to solve a puzzle to finally defeat him. It was all just a huge pain in the ass. The story at first is kind of interesting. I mean the mystery of who's behind everything is intriguing until they actually reveal the one behind everything. Then it's just another basic revenge/take over the world plot. The main villain isn't that interesting and doesn't hold up as a compelling boss fight at the end. I found the three serpent sisters to be more interesting than her, and the last boss fight is basically getting the enemy to collapse the temple's roof to end the game. But enough about the negative, let's try to focus on the positive. For what it's worth, it actually feels like a Xena game. It took inspiration from the show pretty well and feels like it's a part of the Xena universe. It has Ares and Hades, who are the only gods who appear in the game. You don't fight Ares. He converses with Xena and offers hints. You have potions that replenish health and special items that can freeze enemies you fight. I found Xena to be a fun game with plenty of action. The displeasure doesn't come until later in the game, and by that point it's supposed to get challenging. However, it's not a long game by any stretch of the imagination. You can finish it rather quickly if you have the motivation to do so. The ending at the very least is somewhat amusing, with Xena and Gabrielle conversing. I just wish there could have been some parts of the game where you played as Gabrielle. Most of the bosses are rather forgettable in my opinion. With the exception of the Serpent Sisters and that warlock/whatever guy you face later on in the game. Using the chakram is pretty cool and helps with puzzles further down the road. You of course have to aim, and you can direct its movement while it's being thrown in a certain direction. Overall, while this game didn't do too well when it first came out, I found it to be an entertaining game that has the Xena vibe and some interesting points that make it all worthwhile. While it wouldn't be entertaining to someone who isn't familiar with Xena, It's a treat for any hardcore Xena fan that wants the thrill and adventure of being Xena warrior princess. Sure, it has its problems, but what game doesn't? Try it.